Jason Clare joins me now from Canberra. Thanks for your patience there, Jason Clare. So let's talk...
No, that's all right. How are you, mate?
I thought you might want to listen to Jeff Kennett. You know how it is. I mean, I will get your response to some of that in a sec.
You're not here. I thought you'd be here. I'm on my own here in the studio. You're back in Sydney.
Yeah, well, you wanted me there for the speech, no doubt. Now, let's talk about some of the plans here. This notion of giving free places to First Nations students in cities as well as what the Morrison government did in regional areas. Talk us through the rationale there.
Maybe go back to the key point that's in this report. It says that more jobs are going to require a university qualification in the years ahead. It says that about 36% of the workforce has a uni degree today, and that by the middle of the century, that'll be about 55%. So that means more people at university. And at the moment, around about 1 in 2 Aussies in their 20s or 30s have a university degree, but not everywhere. Certainly not in my neck of the woods where I grew up in Western Sydney, same in the western suburbs of Brisbane, western suburbs of Melbourne, same in the bush, same in the regions. And for Indigenous Australians, whereas the average across the country is almost 1 in 2 young Aussies having a university degree, it's only 7% of young Indigenous Australians. If you're a young Indigenous bloke, you're more likely to go to jail than university at the moment. And at the moment, the way the law works is if you're a young Indigenous person who lives in, say, Townsville or Armidale or Port Hedland, then as long as you get the marks, you can get guaranteed access to university for the course that you're qualified for, what used to be called demand-driven. But the same rule doesn't apply if you live in a big city, and many Indigenous, almost 50% of Indigenous Australians live in our big cities. What this report says is if you apply the same rules to the city as the bush, then we could double the number of Indigenous Australians at university within a decade. And that strikes me as a good thing to do.
Well, I grew up in WA, as you know. I went to school with Aboriginal kids. That was after a brief period in your electorate growing up, by the way. I don't remember one of the Indigenous kids I went to school with that went to university, but I know of at least one that went to jail, illustrating your point. Nevertheless, there are parts of the Australian community who will resent this. I'm not going, we can't sugarcoat this. They feel that it's a decision made on race. Why should Aboriginal people get special treatment, as they'd see it, on tertiary education? What would you say to them?
Well, and just to be clear, what the report suggests in the back end of the report is that this is a model that could possibly work for everybody who lives in regional Australia and for poor kids right across the country as well. The big challenge we've got is that not enough people from our suburbs, not enough people from our regions are getting a crack at university. Postcode really is a brick wall for a lot of young people to get to uni. I saw it when I was growing up. A lot of people that I went to school with either didn't finish year 12 or they finished year 12 and they didn't go to uni because they thought it was so far away. It was for someone else, somewhere else. And growing up in Western Sydney, there was a lot of Maccas logos, a lot of KFC logos, not a lot of university logos. So the report is looking at what can we do to help more people from the suburbs, from the bush and Indigenous Australians all to get into university. Now, there's no other group of Aussies where there's a lower representation at university than Indigenous. And what the report says is that if this is happening in the regions, it should happen everywhere. But it takes the next step too, and it says maybe this is a model that we should roll out for all groups of Aussies that are underrepresented at uni at the moment.
Sure. So you're acting on Indigenous students now, but there's a prospect of a wider group being affected by it. Is that what you're saying?
Potentially. And this report's in 2 parts. There's a handful of recommendations that they want us to act on now this year, and we've said we'll do that. And then there's about 75 big ideas in the report where they want feedback from the general community over the next couple of months. They'll give us their final report at the end of the year. So the idea I just mentioned there is one of those 75. We're keen to get people's feedback on the whole report over the next few months so that we get a report at the end of the year that's a real long-term plan to set us up for the future.